Ingrid Bergman, one of the most iconic stars of classic Hollywood. Beautiful, talented, exciting, courageous. She was truly one of a kind. Something else Bergman was? A 3-time Oscar winner. With 7 nominations to her name, she won her first prize in the 1940s, her second prize in the 1950s, and her third prize in the 1970s. What did she win for? Why did she win? And was there anyone else in her category who gave her a fair fight? My name is Brian Rowe, this is the awards contender, and in this video we're talking Ingrid Bergman at the Oscars, and my friend Cody Dericks from Next Best Picture is here to help me break everything down. Sit back, relax, and let's get started. After Ingrid Bergman became a major movie star in Sweden in the 1930s, American producer David O. Selznick invited her to the United States to remake her Swedish film Intermezzo, and the rest is history. She took off very quickly in American cinema in the early 1940s, appearing in Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde opposite Spencer Tracy, and a little film called Casablanca opposite Humphrey Bogart. Before we explore Bergman's first Oscar win, we need to talk about her first Oscar nomination in early 1944, which wasn't for Casablanca, if you can believe it, but was instead for the Ernest Hemingway adaptation For Whom the Bell Tolls. Why the hell was Bergman not nominated for Casablanca, that year's Best Picture winner? Here's what Cody and I discussed.
It is very strange, because it'd be one thing if Casablanca was the kind of film that the Oscars weren't really on board with, it gets appreciated down the line, it gets reclaimed as a masterpiece. They gave it Best Picture. It was well liked within the year of its release. Humphrey Bogart gets a nomination, Claude Rains gets a nomination, and they liked For Whom the Bell Tolls, obviously, as well. It gets a bunch of nominations, it wins Supporting Actress. It's unquestionably a far inferior film to Casablanca, as is her performance. I don't really understand it.
For Whom the Bell Tolls came out later in the year, was a very awards-friendly movie. It's like 3 hours long.
Yeah.
And it was a hit at the box office. So in that regard, I guess that makes sense. She might have lost on her first nomination to Jennifer Jones for The Song of Bernadette, but Bergman didn't have to wait very long for her first win, one more year, as it turned out, in the Best Actress category for Gaslight, a psychological drama about a woman in 1880s London whose husband might slowly be driving her insane.
Because I am mad, I have betrayed you, and because I am mad, I'm rejoicing in my heart without a shred of pity, without a shred of regret, watching you go with glory in my heart.
Also in her category was Claudette Colbert for Since You Went Away, Betty Davis for Mr. Skeffington, Greer Garson for Mrs. Parkington, and Barbara Stanwyck for Double Indemnity. Here's what Cody and I said about Bergman's first, very much deserved Oscar win.
This is the era where Greer Garson and Betty Davis are showing up basically every year, and this year is no different. They're both in this category. This is probably Betty Davis's worst nomination for Mr. Skeffington. I don't really remember much about it besides her having some ghastly old age makeup. And Mrs. Parkington's kind of boring. I really only remember Agnes Moorehead's nominated performance, which is really good and supporting. Claudette Colbert in Since You Went Away is quite good, and it's a good movie. It's a really nice, slice of life wartime movie about the home front. The thing about this category, though, is that I love Double Indemnity so much. I love Barbara Stanwyck so much. She would get my vote pretty easily. But Ingrid Bergman is good in Gaslight, and it's a very good win. I think unquestionably it's the best of her 3 Oscar wins, which I'm sure you agree with. Pretty easily, actually. And it's the kind of win where it just makes sense. Gaslight is a Best Picture nominee. I assume it was a big hit. It gets a bunch of other nominations. She's on her second nomination. It just feels right. And it's a win that has stood the test of time.
Yeah, I haven't seen all 5 of these nominations. I've seen 3. I agree with you that Betty Davis, that is not one of her better nominations. She was kind of the Meryl Streep of her day, just getting nominated for everything, late 30s, early 40s. It's almost every year. I do think the best performance here by far is Barbara Stanwyck in Double Indemnity, and I think she was nominated 3 or 4 times. She never won. So yeah, my pick here would be Stanwyck, but I did really enjoy Bergman in Gaslight. That is her best Oscar win by far. The movie has such a sinister, unique tone, and her moments of panic and fear are really well lived and authentic, and her chemistry with the other actors in the movie I find interesting. The look of it is gorgeous. I didn't love the movie overall, like as a story, it's kind of slow, but just like from the mood of it, the performances, the cinematography, all of that is top notch. And she's doing great work in that movie.
I think the expressiveness of her face combined with the dramatic lighting really does a lot of heavy lifting for the movie. You know, that's really carrying the movie. That I agree with you. I think it's a little slow. It's kind of like, we get it after a certain point, but it's still worth watching. I think obviously its greatest societal contribution is the term gaslighting. Again, you watch the movie and you just the whole time you're like, oh my god, they're gaslighting her. I can't believe it.
She did accept her first Oscar in person in early 1945. Here's an excerpt from her speech.
Thank you very much for my Oscar, and I hope that in the future I'll be worthy of it.
She, of course, continued to prove she was worthy of it, nominated again the next year for the Bells of St. Mary's, and 3 years after that for Joan of Arc. Ingrid Bergman was one of the most beloved and famous movie stars of the 1940s, but then something happened that changed her career forever. As Izzy at Be Kind Rewind broke down in depth in her amazing video about Bergman, the actress fled Hollywood to collaborate with Roberto Rossellini in Italy, had an affair with him, and became pregnant, which caused quite the scandal. For a while, she was essentially canceled in the United States, Bergman working only overseas for many years. Finally, in the mid-1950s, after she separated from Rossellini and started working with other directors, 20th Century Fox took a chance on hiring Bergman for her first American production in 7 years, Anastasia, about a businessman who passes off an imposter who might be the sole surviving member of the Romanov family as the Grand Duchess.
My grandmother is alive to hold out her handful of money. I'd rather you slapped me across the face with that hand.
Anastasia marked Bergman's grand return to Hollywood filmmaking, and she was rewarded with her second Academy Award, again in Best Actress. In her category were Carol Baker for Baby Doll, Katharine Hepburn for The Rainmaker, Nancy Kelly for The Bad Seed, and Deborah Carr for The King and I. Did Ingrid Bergman deserve this second win? Here's what Cody and I talked about.
It's okay, but I think it's I think it's interesting for Oscar nerds like us for a few reasons. First of all, this is Katharine Hepburn's worst nomination. Just saying. Second of all, this is probably Deborah Carr's best chance at winning. You know, King and I is a beloved, successful film. It's a Best Picture nominee. Yul Brynner wins Best Actor for it. But she loses to, as she always did, she never won, to Ingrid Bergman for Anastasia.
Yeah, this was the one film she'd won an Oscar for. I knew almost nothing. Like, I've seen the animated movie from the 90s, but I had not seen, like, any clips or trailers for the 56 Anastasia. I'd, like, heard about it throughout the years. It's kind of a womp womp for me, like, as a movie. She has different physical looks in the film. You know, she's very kind of dowdy at the beginning, and then she's, like, royalty and that, but it happens sometimes where someone doesn't really win for the quality of the performance. It's like politics and other things. And this one feels to me like the Academy re-embracing Ingrid Bergman, saying, welcome back. Thanks for coming back. Not so much like, oh my God, we love this performance. I mean, she'd won before, so it's not like she was overdue for an Academy Awards win or anything. But I'm just like, for this?
You know, it has very little to do with the actual performance, which is true of most Oscar wins, let's be honest. But this one's pretty brazen. You know, this movie isn't really, like you said, it was a hit, but I think it only gets one other nomination for the music, so it's not something the Oscars are really loving. This is just clearly a welcome back Ingrid win.
Bergman was overseas at the time and wasn't there to collect her second gold trophy. In early 1957, her notorious co-star Cary Grant accepted on her behalf.
So, dear Ingrid, if you can hear me now, or if you see this televised film, I want you to know that each of the other nominees and all of the people with whom you worked on Anastasia send you our congratulations, our love, our admiration, and every affectionate thought.
Ingrid Bergman continued working on a variety of projects into the 1960s, including the very entertaining American comedy Cactus Flower. She didn't receive any Oscar nominations in this decade, but she still made a memorable impression at the Academy Awards when she announced the winners of Best Actress in early 1969. The winner, it's a tie! The winners are Katharine Hepburn, Lion in the Winter, and Barbara Streisand.
Your
That's my
Lion in the
impression.
Winter tipped over a little bit into Betty Davis is my only note, but otherwise pretty good.
That's really it, right? In the 60s at the Oscars, that's the Ingrid Bergman story. It's that moment.
I mean, it's a really admirable position to be in as an Oscar presenter. It's the kind of thing you probably want to happen. Even if it's a little chaotic in the moment, it, cements you for all time in like biggest Oscar moments.
In early 1975, Bergman won her third and final Academy Award, this time in the Best Supporting Actress category, for Sidney Lumet's lavish adaptation of Agatha Christie's Murder on the Orient Express, in which he plays a Swedish missionary named Greta.
They had no respect for God. So it was not just a sign. It was also a punishment.
In her category were Valentina Cortez for Day for Night, Madeline Kahn for Blazing Saddles, Diane Ladd for Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore, and Talia Shire for The Godfather Part 2. What did Cody and I think about this win for Bergman?
This category is okay. I'm just going to start by saying I think Ingrid Bergman gets a lot of hate for this win. Would I have voted for her? No. But do I think she's deserving of being called one of the worst winners of all time? Also no. I think she does exactly what she's supposed to do in Murder on the Orient Express. If you want to call that role not Oscar-worthy, that's one thing, but she's doing exactly what she's supposed to do. I think she really only has one scene that's noteworthy, which is the interrogation scene with her and Albert Finney. And I think she's pretty great in that scene. The movie as a whole is just okay. I think it's a little boring for something that's supposed to be a really compelling Agatha Christie mystery. But in that one scene, it's all one take. She's delivering these long monologues about her past, and she's very frazzled. I think she's pretty decent. It feels like a kind of like a sequel to her Gaslight performance, which is also a frightened performance. Do I think she needed a third Oscar for this performance? No. But do I think there's anybody in this category that I'm like, they were robbed? Not really. I like Madeline Kahn and Blazing Saddles quite a bit, which is a movie I don't really care for. Just not my kind of humor. I would have loved her to have an Oscar or to have won for this performance or any performance in general, but she's not somebody I'm like, one of the great robberies of all time right here. It's just not true. Diane Ladd is also good and Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore, but again, kind of similarly to Ingrid Bergman, doesn't have a ton to do in that movie, which is fine. That's what the supporting categories are for. But yeah, I'm okay with Ingrid's win here, even if she would not get my vote.
Yeah, to me, Bergman won here because the category is not overly competitive. If this had been a different year, she probably doesn't win. But because there's not a clear victor here, the other four nominees have at least something against them, whether it's the movie or whatever. I had never seen this film before, Cody. I had seen clips from it. I knew of it. What the hell is happening in this movie? It is so dull. It was such a slog. It took every ounce of my energy, Cody, to get to the end of this movie.
It's disappointing because it's a murder mystery. It should be fun and I don't want to say light, but it should have a propulsive energy to it. Mm-hmm.
Here was my thing with Bergman. She's very good in her moments, like that interrogation scene, but she's barely in the movie. Like is she in more than 6 or 7 minutes? I just don't think there's enough for her to do in the movie to warrant a nomination, let alone a win.
Sure. This is not your fault. I always kind of bristle when people say like they didn't have anything to do in like a supporting performance, because I'm like, it's supporting. Like, where else are they supposed to go with a role this small? And the other thing is, this category, looking at it, that's true of like almost everybody else in this category. Madeline Kahn gets nominated really just for her song. Valentina Cortez has one scene in Day for Night that's noteworthy from what I remember. It's been years since I saw that. As I said, Diane Ladd doesn't show up till the last 20 minutes of her movie. Talia Shire, I barely remember in The Godfather Part 2. So, yeah, sure, Ingrid doesn't get a lot to do in this movie, but neither does really anybody else in this category.
Although she wasn't able to accept her Oscar win for Anastasia, Bergman was at this ceremony, and boy, did she open her speech with a classic, memorable line.
Thank you very much indeed. It's always very nice to get an Oscar.
She went on to receive one final Oscar nomination in early 1979 for her feature film swan song, Ingmar Bergman's Autumn Sonata. What an amazing film that is. I mean, just stunning performances and just very authentic and raw and emotional. By this time, Bergman had cancer. She was very sick and kind of knew this was going to be her last movie. She did go on to do a TV movie after that, but her last theatrical film was Autumn Sonata. And you can just kind of feel her putting everything into that performance. And it's beautiful. I'm so happy she was nominated. I think she should have won over Jane Fonda for Coming Home. But I think at this point, Bergman has 3. They're not going to give her a 4th.
Most actors are not so lucky that they get to give a final performance that's imbued with such energy from real life and is a perfect swan song for their career, and is her best Oscar nomination, which is crazy. 30 plus years after her first nomination. She's excellent in the film. I personally would give the win to Geraldine Page for Interiors, but people can say that's supporting if they want, whatever. I don't really care. But Ingrid Bergman would have been an excellent winner this year, and it would have been her best Oscar win, which is, again, crazy to say, but it's true.
What a career, what a legacy, and what a run at the Academy Awards, even if I do think her wins should have been for different films. Imagine, Cody, if Bergman's 3 wins were for Casablanca, Notorious, and Autumn Sonata.
Fantastic. Great. Pack it up. Wonderful. One of the best 3 runs of all time.
I feel like Ingrid Bergman is one of the most famous classic Hollywood stars, and to win 3 Academy Awards, and really the only good win is Gaslight, it's a little disappointing to me.
Yeah, because on one hand, you look at her and you go, she's got the kind of excellent career and huge impact that she should have more than 1 Oscar. But they kind of nailed it on the first time. And her other 2 wins are not very popular wins for people like us, or are really narrative based rather than performance. So, that's the monkey paw of wanting your favorites to win more than 1 Oscar. They're probably going to win for something not great.
However, let's be honest, these 3 Oscar wins are very impressive. Bergman is still to this day only one of 4 women to receive 3 or more Oscars in acting, the others being Frances McDormand, Meryl Streep, and Katharine Hepburn, the latter of whom has 4 Oscars in acting, one of which was for
Lion in the Winter.
So yeah, Bergman is in a very small, exclusive club. How would we sum up her career? Here's what Cody and I said.
I think she's a great example of the fact that Oscars are not the be-all, end-all when it comes to awarding or nominating an actor's best work. And it really is a testament to the fact that if you love film and you love the Oscars, you should look beyond Oscars for some of their best performances. You gotta watch Notorious. You gotta watch Casablanca, obviously. So it's an interesting Oscar journey. I think it is very indicative of the Academy's taste and their propensity to fall victim to narratives over performance, I would say. But again, her wins, while not my favorite, are not the worst.
I mean, it's quite the run of Oscar nominations and wins. Like, we don't love all of them, but we love Bergman. And I feel like there's only so many people in Oscars history who's won 3 Academy Awards. And Bergman feels like someone who should have 3. So I feel good about it. At the end of the day, all of my criticisms, Cody, like, those Oscar wins can stay. Ingrid Bergman, just frickin' wow. She led a remarkable life, and her movies and performances, and yes, those Oscar wins, will truly live on forever. Thanks so much for watching and subscribing, and let me know in the comments below, what's your favorite Oscar win for Ingrid Bergman, and is there another film you think she should have won for? We'll see you next time at the Awards Contender.